If it were in England, this picturesque and prosperous constituency would unquestionably be safe for the Conservative cause. No such received psychological wisdom applies in Scotland. Indeed, the late Alec Buchanan Smith held the seat partly because he was a maverick, an anti-Thatcherite, a Scot first and a Tory second. So choosing a successor set a headache for local party dignitaries, mulling over lists of applicant hopefuls. What sort of candidate to choose? By-elections can be cruel circuses, especially in marginal seats. In Kincardine and Deeside, the Tories had a choice of two strong potential candidates, both supported by strong factions within the local party, but therefore each equally unacceptable to the other side. So, as so often happens with these things, a third compromise candidate emerged through the middle. The man who lives here. With a baronial mansion and 25,000 acres of land near Balmoral, the party flag-bearer is a member of the Laird tendency. Marcus Humphrey is a genial and decent man, but not one of the people, and in the withering crossfire of a by-election, he proved unhappily accident-prone. The main issue is the NHS. The local hospital, Forester Hill, has applied for trust status. His opponents say that means opting out of the NHS and that Mr. Humphrey is in favour of it.
You are in favour of trust status up until selection?
No. The Liberal Democrats came up with evidence from a taped radio interview.
From my point of view, I can't see any reason why it shouldn't go ahead as trust status, but on the other hand, I don't think it will, because there's too much opposition to it at the moment. He argued.
Well, he clearly did know there was opposition at that time, but he was still prepared to favour trust status.
Back to Mr. Humphrey.
When I was initially interviewed, just about 90 seconds after I'd been told I'd been selected, that was a very emotive moment for me. I hadn't had time to collect my thoughts at all. I was just suddenly let out the door before even I'd seen the executive.
To be fair, under the intense spotlight of daily news conferences, even the most experienced candidate might wilt.
Well, it's really put on the spot every morning. And quite honestly, 8:30 isn't my best time of day. I'm more of an owl. I grow into the day, as it were. But, well, I've enjoyed it. I'm going to miss them. I think I'm going to have withdrawal symptoms on Monday morning or whenever.
But then it's extraordinary what humiliations and hoops intelligent people are prepared to go through in order to make themselves loved. Nicholl Stephen, the youthful and personable Liberal Democrat, found himself participating in an aerobics class for the over 60s.
I was blushing for about 3 or 4 days, and it is quite incredible what you are prepared to do when there are television cameras there and you're expected to perform. One of the things that a by-election has taught me is that come a general election, come future elections, be true to yourself and don't force yourself into some of these crazy positions that you end up being set up for by your campaign team and by your daily agenda.
Well, blame it on the media. But actually, far more than press or other politicians, it's ordinary people on the doorstep or in the street who exhibit the greatest capacity to embarrass, disconcert, or just frustrate the would-be MP. Nicholl Stephen endured a bit of sexual harassment.
And he's a good-looking young man as well.
Isn't he just now? We're 40 years younger.
Labour's mild-mannered Malcolm Savage encountered one of those days when nothing goes right. Instead of potential voters, he kept bumping into Americans.
You come from?
Oh, another person from the United States.
No, очень хорошая.
Or Russians.
Надо, чтобы выбрали достойных, избрали достойных.
So we wish the best people are elected.
Thank you very much indeed.
Or merely those too young to vote.
Well, good luck.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Have you had any literature? There's a nice photograph of John Major.
Marcus Humphrey's soft-sell approach to canvassing met a withering political analysis.
Have a job in Scotland, then. They're not very conservative-minded here.
And sometimes canvassers are reduced to trying to convert each other.
These are nice people, but whether they count in this election is the important matter. And I think the whole question is, it is Nicholl or the Tory, and that's how the people are thinking as far as I can see.
No, that's what you got to hope.
The Scottish journalist Alan McCartney shrewdly managed to avoid such embarrassments, at least in front of the cameras. But he didn't escape cross-examination entirely. The SNP is sometimes accused of being, if not all things to all men, at least different things to different voters in different parts of Scotland, left-wing in the cities, right-wing in the country, which led to this interesting colloquy about political self-definition.
I've never described myself as a socialist. I mean, I find the epithet radical to be something I've been consistent with throughout my political life. Let's put it this way. I'd certainly say that the SNP is the least conservative party fighting this by-election. We'll now start to attach our own labels to the Scottish National Party, our own identity, and own up to the radical identity that the SNP has always had, which I think can reasonably be described in European terms as a social democratic party with a social democratic programme.
Some London commentators have criticised this campaign for being parochial. What it does reflect is Scottish rather than UK concerns. The one issue which has really roused the voters is the proposal, as part of the peace dividend, to abolish the local regiment, the Gordon Highlanders, and amalgamate them with the Queen's Own. This is seen as another example of London insensitivity, or parochialism, and it will do the government no good. The Tory candidate has denounced it, but he was still being distracted by the NHS.
John Major has stated quite categorically that it has his fullest support, and it will never, never, never be nationalised, be privatised. Be privatised. A Freudian slip.
One Freudian slip might be accounted a misfortune. Two suggests carelessness.
I support John Major's government, and look what John Major has said, that he supports the National Health Service through and through, and it will never, ever be nationalised.
Poor Mr. Humphrey was, it must be said, in a very difficult position. Scottish politics are increasingly diverging from English politics, and a late opinion poll by ICM for the Scotsman newspaper showed that nearly three-quarters of the voters here regard the Tories as an English party, remote from Scottish concerns, and that presented a terrible predicament to the party and their candidate. This was highlighted by a skillful Liberal Democrat campaign, which first of all concentrated remorselessly on parish pump issues where the Tories were vulnerable, and then switched it around to ask how, with a Liberal Democrat victory reducing the Tories to only 9 out of 72 seats north of the border, they could possibly justify their continuing governance of Scotland. It's nearly 25 years since a Liberal last won a by-election in Scotland. David Steele, then embarking on a glittering political career, now a senior party statesman and chairman of the Scottish Convention, which campaigns for a Scottish Parliament. Tories and nationalists, he said, believed the only alternatives were a separate Scotland or a centralised United Kingdom.
Alec Buchanan Smith didn't believe that, and neither do I, and neither does the majority of the Scottish people. This by-election could provide a pivotal turning point, not just in Scottish politics, but in the whole of our constitutional future.
Steele's successor, too, sees this by-election as a way of storming the shores of constitutional change. Action man Ashdown took the wheel of a maritime rescue boat to help steer his candidate towards a victory which would reduce the Tories to being the third party in Scotland.
They will have tonight lost any shred of moral authority to govern Scotland. I think Scotland has, through the voice of the people of Kincardine and Deeside, taken a very significant step closer to self-government and to its own parliament.
People of England have quite often had to experience a Labour government that they didn't elect, because voters in Scotland and Wales have produced a United Kingdom Labour majority. Occasionally it works the other way around, and there's a Conservative government, despite the fact that the Conservatives are not the majority party in Scotland or Wales. That is the whole point of a United Kingdom.
But as the United Kingdom becomes more disunited, its component parts headed in different political directions, the problems for the government increase. Nowadays, Guy Fawkes might consider his ends achieved simply by standing for election in a Scottish constituency.
That report by James Cox.